Today we are looking into the lives of 49 women who were brutally murdered by the second most evil serial killer in American history, Gary Ridgway. He was popularly known as the Green River Killer. He targeted mostly underage runaways, vulnerable women, and sex or street workers. Number 1. Mary Jane Malvar. Marie Malvar was 18 years old when she disappeared. She was last seen in SeaTac, Washington, entering a pickup truck near Pacific Highway South. Her boyfriend, Robert Woods, witnessed this and attempted to follow the vehicle but lost track of it at a traffic signal. Concerned, he reported her missing 4 days later. Determined to find her, Malvar's family and Woods searched the area and identified the truck parked at Gary Ridgway's residence. When police questioned Ridgway, he denied any involvement, and without sufficient evidence, the investigation stalled. For over 20 years, Malvar's whereabouts remained unknown. In 2003, Ridgway confessed to her murder, leading authorities to a site in Auburn, Washington, where her remains were discovered. Dental records also confirmed her identity. Number 2. Roberta Joseph Hayes. Roberta Joseph Hayes, also known as Bobby Joe, was just 12 years old when she ran away from home and became part of Seattle's street life. Her experiences were documented in the 1984 film Streetwise, which highlighted the challenges faced by homeless youth in the city. She was last seen on February 7, 1987, after she was released from a jail in Portland, Oregon, at age 21. Her whereabouts remained unknown for years until after 4.5 years, when her remains were discovered near 10 miles east of Enumclaw. She was the 43rd victim of the Green River Killer. Number 3. Lorie Ann Raspotnik. Lorie Ann Raspotnik was only 15 years old when she ran away from home because she had an argument with her mother. Lorie wanted a horse, which her mother, who was raising 2 teenagers after her husband died, said no to. After the argument, her mother never saw her again in their Lewis County home. 3 years later, her partial remains were discovered in Federal Way, Washington, and additional remains were found on few months later in Auburn, Washington. These locations were known dumping grounds of the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, who confessed to her murder, and a DNA was also carried out. Number 4. Linda Jane Rule. 16-year-old Linda Jane Rule was last seen on September 26, 1982, heading to a Kmart on Aurora Avenue in North Seattle. Her remains were discovered 4 months later in a wooded area near Northwest Hospital, now a parking lot. Janie had a challenging upbringing, moving between family members due to her parents' divorces. Despite her love for learning and ambitions, she became involved in the in-street business. During the court trial, her father, Robert Rule, became one of the individuals that forgave Gary Ridgway for killing his daughter. Number 5. Tina Marie Thompson. Tina Marie Thompson was 21 when her remains were found 8 months after her disappearance. She faced challenges while growing up in Oregon that led her to start engaging in the street business, despite being employed as a waitress. She was last seen near a SeaTac Strip motel in Seattle, Washington. Her remains were discovered near the intersection of Highway 18 and Interstate 90 in Maple Valley, Washington. Initially, her identity remained unknown, and she was referred to as Jane Doe B14, until months later, through investigative efforts and dental records, she was identified as the 34th victim. Number 6. Marta Reeves. Reeves was a mother of 4 young girls when she disappeared. She faced challenges, including substance abuse and involvement in street work. She was last seen on March 5, 1990, in Seattle, after calling her husband to send her some money. Her remains were discovered 6 months later near east of Enumclaw, Washington, close to locations where earlier Green River victims had been found. Initially, her death was not attributed to the Green River Killer due to the time gap between her disappearance and those of earlier victims. However, in 2003, Gary Ridgway confessed to her murder, acknowledging Marta as one of his victims. Number 7. Deborah Lynn Bonner. Deborah Lynn Bonner faced challenges in her youth. leading her to drop out of high school and become involved in street work. Despite these hardships, she maintained close ties with her family and aspired to improve her life, aiming to obtain her GED and join the Navy. On July 25, 1982, Deborah was last seen near South 216th Street, close to the Three Bears Motel on Pacific Highway South, an area known for prostitution. 18 days later, on August 12, 1982, her unclothed body was discovered floating in the Green River near Kent by a worker from a nearby slaughterhouse. She had been strangled to death. Number 8. Marsha Fay Chapman. 31-year-old. Marsha Fay Chapman disappeared on August 1, 1982. A single mother of 3, she turned to street work to support her children. She was described as a cheerful and outgoing person. She was last seen leaving her apartment near Pacific Highway South after telling her children she was going to the store, but never returned. 14 days later, on August 15, 1982, her body was discovered in the Green River near Kent, Washington, alongside the bodies of 2 other victims. Marsha was one of the early victims of the Green River killer. Number 9. Cynthia Jean Hines. 17-year-old Cynthia Jean Hines, also known as Cookie, was a friendly and loving girl who faced challenges during her teenage years, including running away from home and associating with the wrong crowd. On August 11, 1982, she was last seen by her brother getting into a red pickup truck and never returned home. Her body was discovered 4 days later, on August 15th, in the Green River near Kent, Washington, alongside the bodies of Marsha Chapman and Opel Mills. Her father doesn't believe she is sex work, but her mother knew. Family members described her as a sweet and caring person who was loved by many. Number 10. Opel Charmaine Mills. Opel Charmaine Mills was a vibrant 16-year-old known for her love of family and aspirations of becoming rich and taking care of her mother. On August 12, 1982, she called her brother from a payphone seeking a ride to a painting job with her friend Cynthia Hines. Her brother, having worked late the previous night, was asleep and unable to assist. Tragically, 3 days later, on August 15th, Opel's body was discovered on the bank of the Green River near Kent, Washington, alongside the bodies of other 2 victims. Opel's family was devastated by her murder. Her father, Robert Mills, a retired forklift operator, succumbed to grief and passed away after her death. Number 11. Terry Renee Milligan. 16-year-old. Terry Renee Milligan disappeared on August 29, 1982, while en route to a fast food restaurant near Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Her remains were discovered on April 1, 1984, near the Green River in Washington state. Number 12. Mary Bridget Meehan. 18-year-old. Mary Bridget Meehan was 8 months pregnant when she vanished on September 15, 1982. She was last seen near the Western Six Motel in SeaTac, Washington. She left the motel to go for a walk and never returned. Her remains were found approximately 14 months later after her disappearance near Tyee Golf Course. Her family, especially her brother Tim, was deeply affected. Number 13. Deborah Lorraine Estes. Deborah Lorraine Estes was only 15 when she was last seen on September 20, 1982, along Pacific Highway South in Federal Way, Washington, after running away from home. At the time, she was known to use different aliases as she had been arrested by the police numerous times for doing street business. Her remains were found nearly 6 years later at a construction site in Federal Way. She was identified through dental records as one of the confirmed victims of Gary Ridgway. Number 14. Denise Darcel Bush. 23-year-old Denise Darcel Bush was last seen on October 8, 1982, in SeaTac, Washington. She was reported missing shortly after her disappearance. Almost 3 years later, the first set of her remains was discovered near Tualatin, Oregon, approximately a few miles from where she vanished. Her other remains were found months later in Tukwila, Washington, near Seattle. These discoveries indicated that her remains had been deliberately dispersed across state lines, a tactic used by Gary Ridgway to hinder identification and investigation efforts. Number 15. Shonda Leah Summers. 16-year-old Shonda Leah Summers was last seen on October 9, 1982, along Pacific Highway South in Seattle, Washington. Her remains were discovered 10 months after her disappearance in a wooded area north of SeaTac Airport. Her mother broke down when Gary Ridgway was given a life sentence instead of a death sentence for the murder of his victims. Number 16. Shirley Marie Sherrill. Shirley Marie Sherrill was 18 years old when she was last seen on October 22, 1982, in Seattle, after having lunch with a friend in the city's International District. The first set of her remains was discovered 2 years and 8 months later after her disappearance in a wooded area near Tigard, Oregon. Same location where Dennis Bush's remains were discovered, approximately 180 miles from Seattle. Dental records confirmed her identity 3 days later. Number 17. Wendy Lee Coffield. 16-year-old Wendy Lee Coffield disappeared on July 8, 1982. After 7 days, her body was found by 2 teenage boys riding their bicycles in the Green River. She had been strangled with her own clothing. She was the first known victim of the Green River killer. Wendy had a troubled upbringing as she came from a broken home and decided to drop out of school at 15 to start street work. This made her one of the many vulnerable young women Ridgway targeted. Her case remained unsolved until 2001, when DNA evidence linked Ridgway to her murder. Her tragic story marked the beginning of one of America's most infamous serial killings. Number 18. Rebecca Becky Marrero. Rebecca Becky Marrero was 20 years old when she disappeared. She was at home with her mother and daughter when she received a call. She told her mother to look after her daughter before leaving without any belongings. She was last seen leaving a motel at Pacific Highway South in Seattle, Washington. Her remains were discovered 28 years later, in 2010, in a ravine near Auburn, Washington, approximately 100 feet from where another victim was found. Dental records confirmed it was her. Number 19. Colleen Renee Brockman. Colleen Renee Brockman was only 15 when she ran away from their home in Seattle. She lived with her father and her brother. Nobody knew the reason she decided to run away. She was last seen on December 24, 1982. While running, she took all her clothes and other belongings, indicating a more permanent departure. She was never seen again. Her remains were discovered after 1 year and 5 months near Sumner, Pierce County. Her father was able to identify her dental work. Number 20. Sandra Denise Major. Sandra Denise Major, originally from Rochester, New York, was 20 years old when she disappeared on December 24, 1982. She had just moved to Seattle and was last seen getting into a truck near Aurora Avenue North. At the time, Sandra was involved in street works. Her family received a letter from her with a Seattle postmark, but no return address, and they never heard from her again. Her remains were discovered 3 years later near Mountain View Cemetery in Auburn, alongside those of 2 other victims. Due to a lack of identification, her remains were labeled Bones 16. In April 2012, a cousin watching a TV movie about the Green River killer prompted the family to contact authorities. DNA samples from family members led to the positive identification of Sandra's remains after 20 years of being unidentified. Number 21. Wendy Marie Stevens. Wendy Marie Stevens was a 14-year-old girl from Denver, Colorado, who ran away from home in 1983. Her remains were discovered in a wooded area 1 year later after a groundskeeper's dog came home with a leg bone. At the time, she was the youngest known victim of Gary Ridgway. Initially, she was referred to as Bones 10. Her identity remained unknown for decades until 41 years later, in 2021, when advancements in forensic genealogy allowed the King County Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with the DNA Doe Project, to identify her remains, providing closure to her family after many years. Number 22. Alma Ann Smith. Alma Ann Smith was born on August 1, 1964, in Walla Walla, Washington. She spent her childhood there before moving between Seattle and Walla Walla during her teenage years. She was described by friends as extremely generous, and without a malicious bone in her body. Alma faced challenges that led her to engage in street work. She was last seen on March 3, 1983, along Pacific Highway South in SeaTac, Washington. Her remains were discovered 1 year later near Star Lake Road in Auburn, Washington. Number 23. Dolores Laverne Williams. 17-year-old Dolores Laverne Williams was last seen on February 16, 1983, at a bus stop outside Red Lion at Rainier Avenue South and South Ferdinand. She vanished without a trace, and her family never saw her again. Her remains were found a year later, in March near Star Lake Road in Auburn, Washington, an area where several other victims were discovered. Dental records confirmed her identity, officially linking her to Gary Ridgway's victims. Number 24. Gail Lynn Matthews. Gail Lynn Matthews, a young mother, was 23 when she disappeared on April 10, 1983, after last seen getting into a truck around SeaTac, Washington. She was never heard from or seen until 5 months later when her remains were found near Star Lake Road in Auburn. She wasn't immediately identified until one of her cousins read a newspaper article on the Green River Killer's unidentified victims. She recognized that one victim had injuries matching Gail's from a previous accident, she reported, and medical records confirmed it was Gail's body. Number 25. Andrea Marion Childers. Andrea Marion Childers was 19 when she disappeared on April 14, 1983, after moving to Seattle at 15 and starting the street business. She was last seen at a bus stop in Seattle. She dreamed of becoming a dancer and taught dance to others. Her remains were not found until 6 years and 6 months later near SeaTac Airport by a worker clearing the brush. Medical examinations confirmed her identity. She was identified as a victim of the Green River Killer. Number 26. Sandra K. Gabbert. 17-year-old Sandra K. Gabbert was once her high school basketball star before she dropped out and fully went into the street. She started living with her boyfriend in various motels along Pacific Highway South when she disappeared. She was last seen near South 142nd Street in April 1983. Nearly a year after her disappearance, her remains were found accompanied by a dog's remains near Star Lake Road. When examination was carried out, it was confirmed to be her. Number 27. Kimi Kai Reichs Pitzor. Kimi Kai Pitzor was 16 years old when she went missing. Initially born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, she later moved to Washington. She was last seen in downtown Seattle along Pacific Highway South in April 1998. The first set of her remains was found 7 months later near Mountain View Cemetery in Auburn. Additional remains were found months later around the same vicinity. Dental records confirmed her identity. She was later confirmed as a victim of Gary Ridgway. Number 28. Giselle Ann Lovorn, 17-year-old. Giselle Ann was intellectually gifted with an IQ of 145 and had a passion for reading. During her early teenage years, she began to feel isolated and started running away from home at 14. She was an ardent fan of the Grateful Dead, often following their concerts across the country. During her travels, Giselle became involved with an older taxi driver known as Jackback, who influenced her to stay in Washington state. To support him financially, she turned to street work operating along the SeaTac Strip near Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. Giselle was last seen on the SeaTac Strip. Her disappearance was reported by her boyfriend after several days. Approximately 70 days later, her body was discovered near abandoned houses south of the SeaTac Airport. She had been strangled with a pair of men's black socks. Notably, at the time of her disappearance, Giselle had blonde hair, but it was found dyed black upon discovery. Number 29. Carol Ann Christensen. Carol Ann Christensen was 21 years old when she disappeared. She was separated from her husband and was working as a waitress to support her young daughter. She was last seen leaving the Barn Door Tavern on Pacific Avenue South after having lunch. She planned to return later that evening for her second shift as a waitress. Tragically, she never returned. 5 days later, her body was discovered by a family hunting for mushrooms in a wooded area near Maple Valley. She had been strangled. Her body appeared to have been submerged in water and was reclothed improperly, with one shoe on the wrong foot and the other shoe missing. A brown paper bag was placed over her head, and peculiar items were found with her body. Carol had no known involvement in street work, but was last seen in an area where the Green River Killer was known to operate. DNA evidence later linked the Green River Killer to her murder. Number 30. Martina Teresa Authorly. Martina Teresa Authorly was 18 when she went missing after she was last seen outside the My Place Tavern, near Pacific Highway South in Seattle. She was never heard from or seen until 1 year later when her remains were discovered near east of Enumclaw. Dental records confirmed her identity. Before her disappearance, Martina joined the Army National Guard during her studies, but received a medical discharge before completing her 6-week training. She had a passion for roller skating, basketball, baseball, and swimming. Number 31. Cheryl Lee Whims. Cheryl Lee Whims was 18 years old when she disappeared. She was the youngest of 4 siblings. Cheryl was last seen on her 19th birthday in Seattle, Washington, while she was on her way to Pacific Highway South to pick up a birthday gift. Although there is no record of Cheryl ever being arrested for street business, her brother and King County police have indicated she may have been involved in it. Tragically, her remains were discovered 10 months after her disappearance just north of Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. In a heartbreaking twist, Cheryl's sister also faced the same fate as she has been missing and not found yet. Number 32. Ivonne Antosh. Yvonne Shelley. Antosh was 19 years old when she disappeared. She was born in Vancouver, but she traveled to Seattle shortly before her disappearance and became involved in street work. Shelley was last seen at 11 p.m. near the Ben Carroll Motel in SeaTac, Washington. Her whereabouts remained unknown for over 4 months when her remains were discovered near Lake Sawyer in Auburn, Washington, close to where other victims' bodies were found. Number 33. Carrie Ann Royce. 15-year-old Carrie Ann Royce was reported missing between May 31st and June 13th, 1983, in the southern suburbs of Seattle, Washington. Despite extensive searches by her family, her whereabouts remained unknown for nearly 2 years. On March 10th, 1985, her remains were discovered in the Star Lake area of South King County, near the sites where other victims of the Green River Killer had been found. Gary also confessed to her murder in 2003. Number 34. Constance Elizabeth Neon. 19-year-old Constance Elizabeth Neon was last seen on June 8, 1983, near South 188th Street and Pacific Highway South in Seattle, Washington. Her car was later found parked on South 188th Street and Pacific Highway South. Her remains were discovered 4 months later in a vacant lot just south of SeaTac Airport. Number 35. Tammy Charlene Lyles. 16-year-old Tammy Charlene Lyles, hailing from Everett, Washington, disappeared in the summer of 1983. Her partial remains were initially discovered 2 years later near the Tualatin Golf Course in Tigard, Oregon, and identified through dental records. In 2003, Gary Ridgway led investigators to another set of remains in South King County, Washington, which were labeled as Bones 20, but remained unidentified at the time. Advanced DNA testing in 2022 confirmed the remains also belonged to Tammy. Number 36. Kelly Marie Ware. 22-year-old Kelly Marie Ware faced challenges in her early life that led her to become involved in street work. She was last heard from on July 18, 1983, when she called her mother from a payphone in Seattle. 3 months later, her remains were discovered just south of the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in SeaTac. Nobody knew who she was initially, as she was never reported missing until a few months later, leading to the identification of her remains via dental records. Number 37. April Dawn Buttram. At the age of 17, April left her family's home in Spokane, Washington, intending to live with her sister in Seattle. However, after arriving, she left her sister's residence. Her family never heard from her again. Nearly 20 years later, in late August and early September 2003, investigators discovered bone fragments in a wooded area near Snoqualmie Parkway, about 26 miles east of Seattle. DNA testing confirmed these remains belonged to April, and Gary also confessed to the murder during his interview. Number 38. Debbie May Abernathy. Deborah May was a 26-year-old lady from Dallas, Texas, who wanted to start life afresh with her son and boyfriend. They all decided to move to Seattle just a few weeks before she went missing. To support her family, Debbie went into the street and turned to a street worker. She went missing on September 5th, 1983, after she was last seen at 8th Avenue and Pike Street in downtown Seattle. She wasn't found until 6 months and 26 days later, when her remains were discovered east of Enumclaw, Washington, near Highway 410. She wasn't still identified until a DNA test was carried out months later. Number 39. Tracy Ann Winston. 19-year-old Tracy Ann Winston was last seen on September 12, 1983, at Seattle's Northgate Mall. Her remains were discovered 2 years and 6 months later near the Green River in Kent, Washington. In 1999, DNA testing confirmed her identity. Tracy was among the victims, and Gary also confessed to her murder in 2003. Number 40. Moren Sufeni. 19-year-old. Moren Sufeni was described as shy, emotionally immature, and naive. Moren had a low self-image during her teenage years, never dated, and reportedly expressed depressing tendencies. In early 1983, she moved into her own apartment in Seattle and began working as an assistant at a local daycare. During this period, her personality shifted. She started frequenting local bars and entered her first serious romantic relationship. Financial struggles led her to consider moving to California with her boyfriend. On September 28, 1983, Maureen left her apartment around 5 or 6 p.m. to visit a nearby 7-Eleven store and never returned. Her remains were discovered 2 years and 6 months later near the intersection of Interstate 90 and Highway 18 in Issaquah, Washington. Maureen was identified as the 39th victim of the Green River Killer. Her sister, Arlene Williams, authored a memoir titled The 39th Victim, detailing Maureen's life and the family's experience. Number 41. Mary Sue Bellow. Mary Sue Bellow was a 25-year-old woman known for her big-hearted nature and willingness to help others. Her mother fondly recalled, "I remember how she used to be so happy. She was always helping others. She was so big-hearted." On October 11, 1983, around 5 p.m., Mary was last seen on the SeaTac Strip. Her remains were discovered 1 year later near milepost 34 on Highway 410, east of Enumclaw, Washington. Number 42. Pammy Annette Avent. 15-year-old Pammy Annette Avent was known for her outgoing and outspoken nature. She was last seen on October 26, 1983, after leaving her Seattle home. Her mother, Velma Harris, had expressed concerns about Pammy's safety, especially due to the ongoing Green River killings targeting young women. Despite these fears, Pammy assured her mother not to worry. She went out that day and never returned. Nearly 20 years later, her remains were discovered near State Route 410, close to Enumclaw, Washington, approximately 40 feet from the road, covered with foliage and dirt, but not buried. The King County Medical Examiner's Office identified her remains through dental records provided by her family. Number 43. Delise Louise Plager. Delise Louise Plager, popularly known as Missy, was a 22-year-old young woman who had a rough upbringing. She had a twin brother, but when she was little, she was taken away from her mother by the state. At the age of 16, she was involved in a car accident that resulted in a broken jaw and hip. After the incident, she got pregnant and gave birth to 3 children. She had addiction issues and faced other challenges, including involvement in street work. She was 22 years old when she disappeared. On October 30th, 1983, she was last seen at a bus stop in the Beacon Hill area of Seattle. Her disappearance remained unresolved for over 3 months when her remains were discovered near the North Bend area. Her youngest child was just 2 when she met her tragic end. Number 44, Kimberly Nelson. 21-year-old Kimberly Nelson was one young lady that believed she could take care of herself. She wasn't afraid of anyone. She was also known as Star. She was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She dropped out of high school during her junior year and developed a substance addiction, which eventually led her to Seattle. She went missing on November 1st, 1983, and was last seen near the Ben Carroll Motel on Pacific Highway South in SeaTac. At the time of her disappearance, she was 3 months pregnant. She wasn't found until 2.5 years later, when her remains were found near North Bend, Washington. Number 45, Lisa Lorraine Yates. Lisa Lorraine Yates was born in Washington, D.C. She was described by her family as gifted, loving, and funny. She faced challenges in her youth that led her to become involved in street life. Lisa went missing on December 23, 1983. At the age of 19, she was last seen in Seattle heading toward Rainier Avenue. No one reported her missing until her sister in another country did after seeing reports on television. Her remains were discovered 2 months later, though the cause of death could not be determined, but the murderer confessed to carrying out the act when he was apprehended in 2001. Number 46, Mary Exetta West. According to investigators, Mary Exetta West, who was just 16 at the time of her disappearance, was a few months pregnant before she went missing. She was last seen leaving her aunt's house in South Seattle to go to the store. Her disappearance remained unresolved for over a year and 7 months, until her remains were discovered at the base of a tree in a wooded area in Seattle's Seward Park by a striking Seattle schoolteacher out for a walk with 2 students. Number 47, Cindy Ann Smith. Cindy Ann Smith, born in Colorado, faced challenges in her teenage years that led her to become involved in street life. On March 21, 1984, at the age of 17, she was last seen hitchhiking on Pacific Highway South near Seattle, Washington. Her disappearance remained a mystery for over 3 years, until 3 boys came across partially buried skeletal remains in a ravine behind Green River Community College near Highway 18. Dental records confirmed the remains as Cindy's approximately 3 years and 3 months after her disappearance. Number 48, Patricia Michelle Bartzak. Patricia Michelle Bartzak, also known as Patty, was just 19 years old when she went missing. She had dreams of becoming a baker, though in her teens, she decided to venture into the street as a worker. She was last seen on October 17, 1986, along Pacific Highway South. She was not found until 6 years later, when a survey crew discovered her remains near Highway 18 in Auburn. This location was near where the remains of 2 other Green River killer victims had been found previously. Dental records later confirmed her identity, and Ridgway also confessed to the crime. Number 49, Patricia Ann Yellowrobe. 38-year-old Patricia Ann Yellowrobe was the eldest of 10 children. She was known for her caring nature, often assisting in raising her younger siblings and caring for her blind grandmother. Despite her nurturing disposition, Patricia struggled with substance abuse and addictions throughout her life. She was last seen in January 1998 in the Seattle area. 7 months later, her body was discovered in a vacant lot on Des Moines Way South near Highway 99 in Seattle. Initially, her death was attributed to an accidental overdose, and she was not listed as a victim of the Green River killer. However, Gary Ridgway later confessed to her murder, making Patricia his 49th known victim. Thank you guys for watching. As of today, Gary Ridgway is still in prison and will be there for the rest of his life. Today we remember all these 49 innocent individuals who lost their lives in the hands of this horrible serial killer.